I make my colleagues nervous sometimes, which is not my intention. Some of them remember that the very first time we did the Posner pro bono exchange in this building, I may have thought that the event began at 4:30 p.m., as our distinguished lecturers do. But I did happen to wander through the Zilber Forum beforehand. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We are so delighted and grateful that you are with us today. As most of you know, my name's Joseph Kearney, and it's my privilege as Dean of Marquette University Law School to welcome you to today's pro bono celebration. This afternoon, we welcome into our pro bono society a substantial number of Marquette law students, or for a term very near at hand for some of them, a number of future Marquette lawyers. We are welcoming or inducting more than 100 law students this year. Of the more precisely 106 inductees, 17 are first-year students, 40 are second years, and the largest number, 49, are third years. Each of these individuals has provided at least 50 hours of pro bono work, a concept that we define quite rigorously, and a quarter of them have contributed more than 120 hours. Kudos and thank you to all of you. We have done an admission or induction ceremony for more than 25 years. For the Pro Bono Society was established during the tenure of my predecessor, the late Dean Howard Eisenberg, who served until 2002. Before we turn to the individual names, we have an additional tradition, itself now more than a decade old, as part of this ceremony. We call it the Posner Pro Bono Exchange. Through this, we honor the memory of the late Gene Posner, a member of our class of 1936, who was a lawyer, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and as well characterized by his family, a supporter of all things Milwaukee. It is right that we should honor his memory today because much of our pro bono work has been supported by a multi-year gift of the Gene and Ruth Posner Foundation. Among other things, the Posner Foundation substantially supports the work of our Office of Public Service, led so well by Assistant Dean Angela Schultz and Director Katie Mertz, with support provided by the newest member of the office, Mary Claire Ramirez. Gene Posner remained an active force in Milwaukee until his death in 2005 at the age of 90. I myself had a privilege of getting to know him in my early years as dean and of gaining a sense of his commitment to the work of lawyers, perhaps Marquette lawyers in particular, in helping individuals solve their problems, whether those individuals had resources or not. Today we are joined by two of Gene Posner's grandsons, Josh and Todd Gimbel, along with some other family members. Josh is a lawyer with Gimbel, Riley, Guerin, and Brown here in Milwaukee. Todd, a 1984 graduate of this law school, works in global corporate affairs, not as far away as he did for many years, but still out in Southern California. Josh and Todd, along with their family more generally, and the Posner Foundation most generally, are great champions of Marquette University Law School. We have asked Josh and Todd to say a few words, whether in remembrance of their grandparents or by way of introduction. So please welcome Josh Gimbel and Todd Gimbel.
Todd, come up. So I've been doing this for many years. As a matter of fact, this is my 14th time doing this. The first time we had the Posner Pro Bono Exchange was at the old Sensenbrenner Hall. And my daughter, who is with me today, Lena Gimbel, was a fifth grader at that time, and now she's a graduate student at Tulane University. So Lena and her friend Noah are here, and Todd's wife, Hani, and his son, Sanjay, are here. And finally, we have a real Marquette lawyer to address this instead of the other guy. But you didn't mention that my dad, our father, is also a 1960 grad of Marquette Law School. So we have very deep ties to this law school, despite where I went to school. But I tell you what, my grandfather would be so amazed to see all of you here today. He like the dean said, was an entrepreneur. He owned some businesses. He had a lithography plant in Florida. He had a candy factory in Florida, and he had some other various things. He was also a philanthropist. He started this foundation back in the 60s, and he has done great things for Milwaukee through this foundation, but I think none better than what he's done here at the law school. He was a lawyer primarily, and he taught my brother and I how important it was to give back to those who can't afford to hire lawyers. And so we've carried that tradition on, me more than Todd because he moved on from the practice of law, but I see some familiar faces here that I've worked with in the past at the Justice Center. And we're just so thrilled that you as law students are so committed to doing pro bono work. And we know that when you become practicing lawyers, some sooner than other, we'll continue in that tradition to do that. 2 years ago, I think it was, Judge Liu was here from California Supreme Court, and he pointed out that there is only one legal aid lawyer for 20,000 indigent people who need legal services. And he said, so it's sort of like if you went to a Marquette basketball game, there'd be one lawyer for everybody there. And if they provided 1 hour of service for all of those people, it would take them over 2 years at 24 hours a day. So I don't think we have that much of a commitment, but you know that there's a big problem out there. So anyway, we're so excited to be here representing the Posner family, and we're so excited that you're being honored here today, and good luck to all of you. And I want to just mention that Angela and Katie and everybody, Mary Forda at the Justice Center, who I work with quite a bit, thank you for all your work. Gene would really be proud of you guys. So, Todd?
Thanks, everybody. It's great to be here as an actual Marquette Law grad, third generation, as Josh mentioned. And what he doesn't mention is the reason he didn't go here is because they didn't let him in. He had to go to Madison. Just kidding. He could. But this is my first time here live. I lived in Singapore for 14 years, so I wasn't able to attend many of these events. And then with COVID, I've Zoomed in a couple of times. But I've been keeping abreast of everything that's going on, and I am just thoroughly amazed and thrilled at all the great work that the students are doing here in this program. There was no such program when I was going to school here. We did some pro bono work, but it was kind of more ad hoc, and I love that there's this center and this ability in an organized way for you all to give back. And I think that it will set you up so nicely for your careers to continue giving back, because it's a very important thing. And even though I left the formal practice of law a long time ago, I still give a lot of legal advice for free to people. I don't know if you call that pro bono. It's probably stale advice by now. But look, I'm thrilled because I have my family here and my son who's in high school, who's starting to make decisions on what he wants to do. But whatever he decides to do, as long as there's an element of that involves giving back to the communities and the folks that will benefit from his learning as he goes along, is something that I want to instill to him. And it obviously has been instilled in all of you. So I want to congratulate you. I want to thank you. And we're just more than happy to be part of this great organization and working with Dean Kearney and Marquette. So congratulations to you all.
So thank you, Josh and Todd. We are so grateful for Marquette Law School's continuing connection with you and your family. We will proceed to the Posner Pro Bono Exchange itself. Our guest this year is Maha Jweied. She is co-CEO of the Responsible Business Initiative for Justice. This is an international nonprofit that works with companies to champion fairness, equality, and effectiveness across systems of punishment and incarceration. From 2010 to 2018, Ms. Jweied was in the United States Department of Justice's Access to Justice Office. This is the primary office in the executive branch focused on supporting indigent defense and civil legal aid for low-income and vulnerable groups, including indigenous communities. She led the office during 2017 to 2018. I could tell you a good deal more about Ms. Jweied's background or current pursuits, but the idea, of course, is to hear from our guest directly, if in an interlocutory way. Else it would not be an exchange. So with that, I will hand it over to Derek Mosley, a Marquette lawyer and director of the Lubar Center for Public Policy Research and Civic Education, adding only, as I do, my personal thanks to Maha Jweied for joining us today. Please welcome her. Thank you.
I'm going to pour this before we start.
Oh, yeah, please. How is everyone? Yeah, you're hot.
Or mic'd.
Your mic's hot. How is everyone? Good? Good. So while Maha gets set up, and I'm going to start right now since you're all good to go.
Yes.
So whenever I talk to anybody who's in the law, and especially people say to me all the time, they always ask, you're a lawyer, why did you become a lawyer? And I think I might have told you this story. So I grew up, like the dean, on the south side of Chicago, and I didn't know many lawyers. And the first lawyer I'd ever seen, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say this.
No, I love it. It's good.
The first lawyer I ever saw was a character played by Blair Underwood. His name was Jonathan Rollins, and he was an attorney on LA Law, right? And I saw him, and I said, oh my gosh, if we can do this, I can do this, right? And so I want to ask you, why did you, I know it's better than that, but why did you become a lawyer?
I think that's very good. But before I do, I want to thank you. I want to thank the dean. I want to thank Angela and Katie and the Posner family. Really, it's an honor to be here, really a privilege to be with you all. And congratulations to everyone in the room. I'm very happy to see the family, too. This feels very weird in the COVID era that we're still in, and really wonderful to be in person. So yeah, Judge, why? I mean, it's really hard to pinpoint. I think a lot of folks in the room, a lot of the students here will have the same thing of, oh, when I was younger, I used to argue well, and people would say I argued well, or at least I argued. Whether it was well is questionable. And I think it really was, though, a sense of, I come from a family where education was necessary. It wasn't optional, which is a privilege. And I don't mean to say, I'll confess, I had to go through law school with debt. So it wasn't to say that law school was a gift to me, but the notion of education was a gift to me from my family. And so from there, really, it was a matter of considering what it is I wanted to do in this world. And this notion of social justice was instilled in me by my family, by my faith. And really, we prepped a little. I think, when I was in high school, I did a mock trial course. Maybe it's that. I actually do think it was just more or less a sense that I wanted to do something that I felt that I could be giving back to my community and to individuals who needed more support, and I felt that the law could do that for me. Yeah.
Which is interesting, because when you graduated from law school, you went and worked at
a
giant firm, right? You went to work at Aaron Fox,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there was something about that experience, though. So first of all, when you worked at Aaron Fox, tell us, what did you do? What was your main responsibilities?
I worked in a real estate litigation practice. This is a firm in DC. It's now a little bit more national than it was. It had a few offices back then, but it was kind of a really solid DC firm. And the truth be told, I feel like, are we being recorded? The firm was so wonderful, but I always sort of knew it may not be there for life in terms of what I would do next. But yeah, I know where you're going to go next. I don't know if I should start going there.
Well, okay. So you had a unique experience, right? So I think when we were talking, that was the point where you probably got that fire, right? So what was it that you got to do while you were at Aaron Fox that was kind of outside of your regular responsibility? Yes.
Pro bono, of course. Really, it was the thing that really gave me a desire and a willingness to want to continue to do more than what I had been doing in my day-to-day. I will say this, and the pro bono I did was juvenile death penalty, so it was at a time when that was still a possibility in this country. Very happily, that's been ended with a Supreme Court decision. But I will say that really the firm was wonderful in that it trained me immensely. I worked with lawyers and partners who had such integrity, and they, I feel like my integrity, if I have it, and I believe I do, it came from my family, but they modeled it for me as well. So that firm experience really showed me it didn't matter what type of lawyer you are, you can be proud of who and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and not have to be a public interest lawyer to do good works. And so in fact, I worked on this death penalty case, and it really was very much a point in my life that really adjusted what I wanted to do beyond the day-to-day that I had been doing at that time.
Do you mind going into the case a little bit?
No, I don't mind at all. So the case was coming out of Alabama. The thing that for me was really sort of difficult was that my client was my age. I mean, by that point, I was in my 20s, but he was my age, and so when there was this real idea that but for the grace of God, his life was a certain way and mine was different. So he grew up in Alabama. He was unfortunately very impoverished and addicted to drugs, and he had his drug dealer father figure and caught up in some bad stuff, including in a murder. And I'll say the very interesting thing about this case is that race was not a factor. Everybody in the case was white, but a cop was killed, and so all to say who pulled the trigger, there's some questions on that, but this was the reality of this case. And so the case came to my law firm. It was placed through an initiative in Alabama. I think a lot of people know today Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative. It was one of his predecessor organizations that helped place these cases. And at the time, there were about 70 juvenile death penalty cases in the US when the Supreme Court, in a decision called Roper versus Simmons, ruled that sentence as unconstitutional, and then he was sentenced automatically to life without parole. And of course, that development of that law continues in terms of whether or not juveniles can be sentenced to life without parole. And there's a lot of changes, but still, he's still presently sentenced as such. Yeah.
You know, you said something to me when we had talked briefly before about when you were handling that case, the enormity of it. How your everyday was different because of this case.
That's right.
And I don't know if you remember. Do you remember the quote?
I do. Well, I don't know about let's see if I can remember the quote. But the real feeling was, I felt like, could I really stop working on a particular day? You know, you work on cases and you're doing your work and you're tired and you want to go home. And oftentimes in a private law firm setting, it's not life and death. It is potentially to resolve a problem between two clients, and often that has to do with money or with something tangible that's beyond life and death. And so there was a lot of guilt associated with like stopping work that day and going home and feeling hungry and should I take a break? It's hard. And it was only a pro bono case, but it was huge, of course. It takes a lot of time. There are many of us who are working on it. It was not my only case. But a testament to the firm was that it was the same level of support as any other case at the firm. He was our client, and we had an obligation and a duty to provide him with zealous representation. And so, truly for me, it was really adjusting in terms of thinking about what I wanted to do with my life, but then also this sense of, is it fair for me to stop working, turn on the TV, eat something, things like that. Well, of course, you have to do all those things. So you have to manage the sense of obligation and duty with life and feeling sort of this sense that you're allowed to have a life and you have to fill your well to be able to give to others.
And so after that experience, you decided to leave the firm. And then when you left the firm, where'd you go after that?
So I went into government, and it's not federal government, and it's not really that by design. I will say this for all the students in the room, a lot of people's resumes look like it was all designed from the day they left school. I think mine kind of looks like, wait, it's not. It was happenstance. So I'm from the DC area. I went back to the DC area. What's in DC? The federal government. I had never intended to go to the federal government. It's not philosophical or ideological. It just wasn't on my radars. That's what I wanted to do. But I had a friend who had just gone into the federal government, and she said, oh, you want to leave? So look at this, usajobs.com or gov, I can't remember now. So I looked online, and I saw there was one job that I applied for. And again, that's very unusual, and I know that's very privileged to say, but I applied for one job in the federal government, and I got it. It was the US Commission on Civil Rights. And it really, I think, absolutely adjusted my career from that point in terms of where I am today is all a reality of having decided to go into the federal government and do policy work.
And so at that position, what were your responsibilities?
So I was in the Office of the General Counsel, and the Civil Rights Commission is a small agency created in 1957 by the Civil Rights Act of 1957. Its enforcement authority is actually quite, let me say, its powers are limited. The most it can do is subpoena, and so When you can imagine in 1957 when it was created, there's commissioners, they would assemble in different parts of the South, quite honestly, and then subpoena voting commissioners to bring them forward and say, what are all these obstacles you're putting in place for African Americans to vote? Things like how many bubbles in a soap and how many whatever, and like literacy tests, things of that nature. So its authorities are limited, but the idea, or rather its powers are limited, but its authority is to act as oversight of the enforcement of federal law. So today, it primarily does that by reviewing other federal agencies' enforcement of federal civil rights laws. So when I was there, we looked at school desegregation laws, we looked at religious freedom in prison, wiretapping-related issues coming out of 9/11, things like that.
But while you were there was like a break, right?
Yeah,
you actually left, and you left the country for a while.
That's true.
And
That's right.
Why did you decide to do that?
Yeah, so I took a testament to the Civil Rights Commission. They let me take sabbatical, and I went to the Yugoslav Tribunal in The Hague, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. And I was there it was an internship. Let me also just reveal, it was an internship. It was unpaid. I was a practicing lawyer, and I chose to take an unpaid leave. And what that meant was I had student debt, and thank goodness you can pause your loans for a little piece of time. And I had a little bit of savings to kind of try to get me by, and I got some help from my family to borrow some money to do that. And I say all of that just to say that, again, looking at someone's resume, it seems very privileged that, oh, and I got a job I got an unpaid internship at the Yugoslav Tribunal. And so it was really, for me, it was really important to do for a number of reasons, not least of which I had studied international law in law school, and I had really fashioned myself as being someone who was concerned about civil rights law and international human rights law and potentially the intersection of the two, but had not done the international piece, really. My undergrad degree was international affairs, but not anything beyond that. So for me, it was just to test the waters about my interests and to adjust where I was going to be doing with my career and my life. And really, a lot of gratitude to the commission for letting me take that leave. It was in 2008. And it was really interesting, really fascinating. Yeah.
So you're at The Hague. Mm-hmm. You're broke.
Yeah, right. I am. That's true.
And so you decide to come back.
That's true.
Right?
I did.
And then you go to DOJ at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, about a year later. And what happened was 2008, of course, was an election year in this country. And after President Obama was elected, I sort of paid attention what was happening in government, what opportunities were being created by a change in government in terms of offices that might or may not be created or expanded. And so the office that I eventually joined that the dean mentioned wasn't created until the year I joined it. It was created in 2010. It's called the Office for Access to, at that time it was called the Access to Justice Initiative because it wasn't a fully fledged office. But again, more evidence that I would never have known that office created when I was graduating from school. It did not exist. And so I'm, again, very lucky that I was able to transition from the Civil Rights Commission to the Access to Justice Initiative about a year and a half after I returned. Yeah.
And when you got there, that kind of ramped up all of your pro bono work and the work that you did, not only here, but also internationally as well. So exactly what were you doing when you were part of DOJ?
Yeah, it was a great experience for me. So the office really is, as the dean described, the primary office in the executive branch focusing on legal services for the poor. But our constituents, our beneficiaries of the work were public defenders and legal aid lawyers. So you can imagine DOJ, the primary agency for law enforcement, federal law enforcement, so this is prosecutors, FBI, et cetera, would have an office that was considering the needs of defendants, especially poor defendants. And so it was really fascinating and a testament to the leadership of the department to want to create this office and give us, those of us who came into that office space, to be able to be sitting with other folks working on policy at the Department of Justice, bringing a perspective that didn't exist before. And the international piece of that is when we were created, we also were tasked with engaging with other ministries of justice, other governments, broadly speaking, on these same issues on access to justice. And so that was really a peer-to-peer type of engagement, but also was one that was really humbling because the US is very open about its access to justice crisis. We really do. You can't afford a lawyer, you're in trouble. If you're in the middle class, you're in trouble. I mean, if I needed a lawyer for something really serious, I'm in trouble. So there's this reality that in this country, as much as we really value the law, the ability to actually provide people with opportunities to have their problems resolved is very limited unless you have resources. And so we talk about that very openly in this country, and that meant that when we went to the international settings, we could speak just as openly. And so that humbleness, that ability to share the problems that exist in the provision of legal services for the poor with other countries really is unique, I think, in the access to justice space, because there is this willingness to share our problems. And that means you can probably get to your solutions more readily. So it was very gratifying and really rewarding, and a real honor and privilege to be the US government in those settings.
But in 2018, the office is closed.
That's true.
All right,
Yeah.
and then eventually you become the co-CEO of the Responsible Business Initiative for Justice.
Yes.
And tell us exactly, I know the dean went into it briefly, but could you tell us exactly what your mission was?
Sure.
Is it the RBIJ?
RBIJ, you got it, Judge. So yeah, I mean, I will say this: the office was closed, but I could have stayed in government. So I don't want people to feel that, then I was also kicked out. Nope. And happily, the office has been reopened. About a year and a half ago, the office has been reopened, which is incredible. But yes, RBIJ is a newer nonprofit. It's about 5 years old, and I say that because folks who pay attention to the business world and doing anything in the space of speaking out will know that maybe 15 years ago, an organization that I'm going to describe wouldn't be successful. But today, increasingly, both because consumers demand it, testament to younger generation of consumers, like many of the folks in this room, as well as a desire, I think, by business to stand up and be a little different from what they had been doing in the past, has created this space for having businesses speak with authority, or at least lend their voice to opportunities to create a better, more just world. So RBIJ really, it takes its lessons from campaign organizers who are leading reform efforts in the states on a number of issues, is anywhere from, again, death penalty abolition, but also including things like helping individuals with criminal records have opportunities through clearing their criminal records. Of course, that's called Clean Slate. Clean Slate is an initiative that's across the country in many states. The idea isn't that your criminal record is squashed and no one knows about it. No law enforcement certainly will know about it. But in many instances, people have done something when they were young, after a period of time, not reoffending, they have an opportunity. They should have the opportunity to be able to get a job, to have the benefits that other people do that unfortunately having a criminal record in this country will prevent you from having. So all to say, there's lots of different campaigns in the country, across the country, where, again, locally led, driven by individuals who know what's best for their community. We partner with them and bring in the business voice to advance their efforts. And the idea is that there's no better constituency to influence legislators and policymakers in the business community. It neutralizes concerns about partisan nature of some of these reform efforts, but it also just creates space for more conversation, more opportunity.
So what I'll do, in the interest of time, because I know that I just wanted to ask you, so you have these young minds ready to tackle all the issues that you and I have been fighting for some time, and what is the piece of advice that you would give to anyone interested in this sector of the law, anyone interested in giving back? What's the advice that you would give to them?
I'll do two.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first is, this one feels a little less about what I just talked about, is that guard your integrity, guard your name. You have one brand in life. It's so critical just in life, no matter what. It's super critical as lawyers, because who and what you are is based on trading who and what you are. And so any point in your career, just protect it. And that means, it doesn't even mean necessarily that you have to do something flashy or big, but always gut check. You have family here behind you. They support you. They taught you what's right. You have the law school who's taught you what's right. And don't second guess yourself when you feel like someone's asking you to do something that you think is wrong. That's one. But then number two.
But that's a big one.
It's big.
That's a real big one.
Yeah,
and truth be told, I mean, as someone who's worked in the courthouse for 27 years, once your reputation is tarnished, it's
done.
over,
You're
right?
done.
It's over. Everybody knows about it. So that's a good one to start with.
Yeah. But the second one is that your career is long, and your jobs just intersect with that. So I know a lot of you are looking and saying, oh, I want a career in X, Y, or Z, or I want a job in X, Y, and Z. And you won't. Where I am today, I could not have gotten the position I have today leaving law school. In fact, my first job out of law school was in a law firm doing work that's very different from what I do today. So you can always have in your mind the clarity of what is the career that for me, the ultimate career was international human rights, but domestically focused. And what you do is you just develop that over time. So every job you take helps you develop that persona. That includes the writings you do on the side, all the voluntary things you can do for the bar. There's different bar associations, state, national, engaging in those spaces, developing who and what you are. And it includes pro bono. And they didn't even set me up to say this, but it includes pro bono. Maintain your desire and drive to do pro bono. And I don't even mean to say that you all have to become public interest lawyers. Pro bono is in lots of different spaces. You could be helping small businesses do something that feels aligned with what you're interested in doing. So all to say, feel the gratitude of life being potentially, God willing, long for all of us, but for all of you, especially your career, having a long path. And just feel confident that as you move along, you will get to the place you want to get in terms of being a certain type of individual in the profession in a job that you love.
So Maha, I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you.
As you.
Thank you so much for coming here, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Funny story, we were Zooming Monday, was that Monday?
Yeah.
And I said, have you ever been to Milwaukee? And she said, no, I've never been to Milwaukee.
Sorry.
And then
I love it.
I said, what do you know about Milwaukee? Laverne and Shirley, right? And so we don't have a Laverne DeFazio statue or what's her name?
Shirley Feeney.
Shirley Feeney? Yeah. But we do have the bronze
I
fonts.
know, I'm gonna go find them.
So
I
please
will.
find the
I
bronze
will,
fonts
I will.
tonight. So everyone, if you please would join me in giving a round of applause to Maha Jweied.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Should we take
Thank you. Judge Mosley and Ms. Jweied will be with us after the program in the Zilber Forum for our reception. We try to strike a balance here at this event between welcoming our guest and honoring all of you. We regard those as entirely congruent matters, and we will turn to the second half of the program, as it were. I will say, as we do, and you know this next, but it seems to me worth observing nonetheless, so much of education involves learning from others, and that, to me, requires having examples or exemplars, which Maha Jweied certainly is, and so I thank you very deeply for coming to town and being here with us. Let's now turn our attention more specifically toward our inductees. Not yet Marquette lawyers, they have nonetheless already distinguished themselves in their commitment to some of the best ideals of the legal profession. In particular, even while students, while concerning themselves with courses, including internships in the community, and despite the frequent need to find some remunerative work, even in these circumstances, these individuals have engaged in pro bono service. The students whom we honor this afternoon have met rather rigorous criteria. They have provided at least 50, and in some cases more than 120 hours of work that has been, and these will be in the conjunctive, so there will be an and between the C and the D, A, not for academic credit or compensation, B, supervised by a licensed attorney, C, primarily legal in nature, and D, in the service of the indigent, those who otherwise lack access to justice, or a nonprofit whose mission is to serve such individuals. The projects in which today's inductees have served are extensive. This group has provided more than 9,000 hours of service this past year, and impressive. Let me give a few examples. 19 of today's inductees have been involved with programs administered or led by Legal Action of Wisconsin. Among those students, some focused on Legal Action's eviction defense project to help identify whether a defense to eviction is available for a tenant or whether an agreement can perhaps be reached with the landlord. Others served in a new consumer debt defense clinic designed to provide defenses for debtors facing small claims in Milwaukee County and Waukesha County. Still on the legal action front, others worked with students enrolled in the Wisconsin Technical College system to help eliminate barriers to employment and housing by sorting out and cleaning up criminal and eviction records, recovering driver's licenses, and addressing consumer debt, employment or unemployment, bankruptcy or unemployment insurance needs. Others yet focused on the time-intensive and detail-oriented preparation of Chapter 7 bankruptcy petitions. So that's Group 1, or if you prefer, Groups 1 to 4 or more. Continuing on, beyond legal action, 14 of today's inductees have worked under attorney supervision to draft answers to questions posted by low-income Wisconsinites to the American Bar Association's Free Legal Answers Virtual Legal Advice Clinic. The Free Legal Answers platform is administered here in Wisconsin by our state's Access to Justice Commission. The program's administrator reports that the vast majority of new volunteers with the project over the past 3 years have been recent Marquette Law graduates. How great is that? 6 of our inductees spent part of their winter break last academic year in service to Afghan nationals at Fort McCoy. These students helped those visitors to Fort McCoy put into writing personal experiences surrounding the collapse of the Afghan government and, in many instances, their persecution by the Taliban, the first step in seeking asylum or other legal status that would support the Afghans staying in the United States. 4 of our inductees participated in a Wills Caravan trip that took place just this past month. The trip, led by the Indian Law Office at Judicare Legal Aid, was designed to reach members of Wisconsin's Indian tribes to develop and complete estate plans. The Milwaukee Justice Center, a collaborative project of the Milwaukee County Circuit Court Clerk's Office, the Milwaukee Bar Association, and Marquette Law School, continues to thrive, with 68 of today's inductees having been involved with the Family Forms Clinic, the Expungement Pardon Clinic, parenting conferences, the Civil Legal Help Hotline, and adult guardianship forms preparation. And finally, but scarcely least, our very own Marquette volunteer legal clinics have been served by so many of you. More than 70% of today's inductees have been involved with the MVLCs. Our brief legal advice clinics have expanded over the years to include not only in-person services at the Veterans Service Office, the House of Peace, United Community Center, and Milwaukee Justice Center, but also now remote clinics on Zoom that have served people from 48 or 2/3 of Wisconsin's counties. The MVLCs have also expanded topically to encompass the general civil and family legal advice clinics, estate planning clinics, and even advice for nonprofits and small businesses. And all of this has not even been an exhaustive list. Altogether, of the 182 students expecting, and on the eve of exams, I will say expected to graduate next month, approximately 1/2 will be members of the Pro Bono Society as inducted over the course of their 3 or more years here. You are, individuals who have given at least 50 hours of service. How remarkably impressive. Please know that we are so grateful, even admiring. Dean Schultz, Director Mertz, and I will proceed with recognizing each individual's induction into the Pro Bono Society. So, if my colleagues could please join me here.
I feel so grateful. I think that there's something about gathering like this and just taking a moment to reflect on the year of service, but also multiple years of service for so many of you. It just gives me such a sense of gratitude. So thank you all so much for your work. The way this is going to work is we're going to start with the A's are over here, and as you know, you're all seated alphabetically. So we are going to read your name one by one and tell a little bit about the work you've done. So I'll just ask the first chunk of folks if you'll stand up and come over here, because I'm going to be, all of you then will follow in line, and we'll all come through, and I'll hand the certificates. So you'll read the name? Sure. Yeah, I think we're ready.
All right. Hannah Ament.
Hannah has given more than 120 hours of service at the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic's United Community Center and Veterans Service Office. She's also volunteered for the Adult Guardianship Clinic and spent 4 nights at Fort McCoy.
Anna Ashley.
Anna gives her time to a weekly shift at the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic at the United Community Center. She even drives other students there as the clinic shuttle driver.
Claire Austin.
Claire is a member of the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic's Student Advisory Board. She gives her time to the Expungement Pardon Clinic and at the United Community Center. She also uses her leadership post with the Immigration Law Association to involve other law students in a one-day naturalization clinic.
Julie Barnett.
Julie has given her time to the Civil Legal Helpline and to the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics.
Grace Barrett.
Grace gives consistently to the Milwaukee Justice Center Family Law Forms Clinic and also incorporates remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic shifts into her busy 1L schedule.
Alexis Bauer.
Alexis has given over 120 hours of pro bono time to Legal Action of Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forms Clinic, and to the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic at the United Community Center.
Ivy Becker.
Ivy has consistently given her time to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forms Clinic, both in person at the courthouse and remotely by Zoom.
Michael Behrens.
Michael has volunteered at the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forms Clinic and with the American Bar Association's Free Legal Answers program.
Jessica Birmingham.
Jessica gave her time pro bono to the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office in the Domestic Violence and Sensitive Crimes units.
Sienna Borchard.
Sienna has given over 120 pro bono hours to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Forms Clinic and to those in need of private minor guardianships with Kids Matter.
Selena Bravo.
Selena began her pro bono journey with the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics and this semester expanded to working with Legal Action of Wisconsin's Bankruptcy Advice Clinic.
Allison Breidenhagen.
Allison made a consistent commitment to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forms Clinic both in person and remotely.
Jessica Brown.
Jessica has given more than 120 hours by focusing her efforts on the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics.
Nancy Catani.
Nancy has contributed to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forms Clinic, the Estate Planning Clinics, and to Legal Action's Consumer Debt Defense and Eviction Defense Clinics.
Ethan Schmiel.
Ethan has given over 120 hours through consistent work with the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics and Legal Action's Project for Technical College Students.
Kevin Clancy.
Kevin has given time to technical college students in need through the Legal Action Project and has given consistently to the ABA's Free Legal Answers Project.
Teresa Correa McMitchin.
Teresa's pro bono services have included the Adult Guardianship Forms Clinic, the Estate Planning Clinics, the Expungement and Pardon Clinics.
Tyrese Denson.
Tyrese is a member of the Student Advisory Board for the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics and has volunteered with both remote clinics and at the United Community Center.
Samantha Dorning.
Samantha has given her time to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forms Clinic, to Legal Action's Student Legal Aid Project for technical college students, and to a nonprofit focused on protecting retirement security of workers in Wisconsin.
Stephanie Dyer.
Stephanie has volunteered with both the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics and with the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forms Clinic.
Jody Ekman.
As a member of the Student Advisory Board, Jody has explored nearly all of the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics, including the Remote Clinic, the Small Business Clinic, the Veterans Service Office, the House of Peace, the United Community Center, and the Milwaukee Justice Center.
Noelle Falali.
Noelle Nadia participated in the service trip to Fort McCoy, and she's also volunteered with the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics.
Sophia Flood Ilyafi.
Sophia is part of the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic's Student Advisory Board and has contributed most of her time to the United Community Center Clinic and also to the Clinic for Nonprofits.
Colby Forrest.
Colby is a member of the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic's Student Advisory Board. She's given consistently to the remote clinics, the House of Peace, and the United Community Center. She's also volunteered with the Bankruptcy Clinic.
Jocelyn Gadini.
Jocelyn has volunteered for the Civil Legal Helpline, the Estate Planning Clinic, and the Marquette Voluntary Legal Clinic at the United Community Center.
Mary Claire Griffith.
Claire is a consistent contributor to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forums Clinic and to multiple locations of the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics.
David Hansen.
In addition to serving at the United Community Center, David has made a very consistent volunteer contribution to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forums Clinic.
Colton Hannes.
Colton has given his time to the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics, primarily at the House of Peace, but also at the United Community Center and on the Mobile Legal Clinic.
Abigail Hines.
Abigail has given her time to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forums Clinic and also to the Estate Planning Clinic and to 2 locations of the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics.
Andrew Holtzman.
For 3 years, Andrew has given consistently to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Civil Legal Helpline.
Angelica Hutchins.
Angelica has given her time consistently to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Civil Legal Helpline.
Audrey Johnson.
Audrey participated in the winter break trip to Fort McCoy. She's also volunteered with the Expungement Pardon Clinic and with the Juvenile Division of the Wisconsin State Public Defender's Office.
Ryan Johnson.
Ryan has given over 120 hours through his very consistent commitment to the Family Law Forums clinics at the Milwaukee Justice Center.
Josiah Jordan.
Josiah participated in the winter break trip to Fort McCoy and has given to the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics. He currently volunteers with Legal Action of Wisconsin.
Benjamin Karbowski.
Ben has served at the Eviction Records Cleanup Clinic, the Milwaukee Justice Center Family Forums Clinic, the Adult Guardianship Clinic, the Expungement Pardon Clinic, and with the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics.
Kaylee Kell.
Kaylee has given over 120 hours of her time to the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics as a student advisory board member and through her participation in numerous clinics. She also served on the trip to Fort McCoy and initiated her own service to the Lone Star Justice Alliance in Texas.
Caleb Kleiman.
Caleb has served in the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic's remote service, as well as with the clinics for small businesses and nonprofits. Additionally, he worked with the Adult Guardianship Forums Clinic and with the Expungement Pardon Clinic with the Milwaukee Justice Center.
Tara Kneep.
Tara has given over 120 hours in her capacity as a student advisory board member for the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics, where she expertly supports the remote clinics and the clinic at the House of Peace.
Sarah Lamadou.
Sarah has steadily and consistently volunteered with the Milwaukee Justice Center's Civil Legal Helpline.
Haley Lipinski.
Haley has split her time between the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics at the House of Peace and at the United Community Center.
Jacob Lloyd.
Jacob participated in the service trip to Fort McCoy. He also gave his time to the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics and at the Veterans Service Office.
Michael Longworth.
Michael has worked at the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forums Clinic and this semester got involved with Sojourner Family Peace Center's Domestic Abuse Injunction Petition Assistance Clinic. He also participated in the Special Naturalization Clinic this semester.
Stephen Lavelle.
Stephen has given very consistently to the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic for small businesses and also participated in the General Civil Remote Clinic.
Heidi Meyer.
Heidi has given over 120 hours of her time through the service trip to Fort McCoy as a student advisory board member for the MBLC, at the House of Peace, at the United Community Center, at the Veterans Service Office, and most recently at the Milwaukee Justice Center.
Julian Marufo.
Julian gave over 120 hours of his time to the Waukesha District Attorney's Office.
Joseph McCarthy.
Joey has been a consistent volunteer with the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Law Forums Clinic and now with the Expungement and Pardon Clinic.
Kiera McKinney.
Kiera has given over 120 hours of her time to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Forums Clinic, the remote MBLCs, and to the Public Defender's Office in La Crosse.
Nicholas McMitchin.
Nicholas has explored a variety of pro bono opportunities, including with Legal Action of Wisconsin, the Bankruptcy Clinic, with Free Legal Answers, and with the One-Day Naturalization Clinic.
Nicholas Monday.
Nicholas has given over 120 hours of his time through very consistent service to the Milwaukee Justice Center's Civil Legal Helpline.
Kimberly Neveretta.
Kimberly has given over 120 hours of her time to the remote MBLCs and to Legal Action's Project for Technical College Students.
Ruth Nord-Pakar.
Ruth has completed over 120 hours of volunteering her time and Spanish language skills with the Milwaukee Justice Center's Family Forums Clinic, the Expungement Clinic, the Bankruptcy Clinic, and the MBLCs.
Allison O'Keefe.
Allison's pro bono service has included time with the Civil Legal Helpline and the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic at the United Community Center.
Taylor Olson.
Taylor has shared her time with the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics, the Expungement Pardon Clinic, and the recent Will's Caravan trip for Wisconsin's Indian tribes.
Eric Peterson.
Eric has made a consistent commitment to the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics at the United Community Center.
Abigail Phillips.
Abby has volunteered over 50 hours with various locations of the MBLCs, with the Free Legal Answers Project, the Expungement and Pardon Clinic, and the Adult Guardianship Forums Clinic.
Braxton Phillips.
Braxton has given time with various locations of the MBLCs and also spent 4 nights at Fort McCoy helping Afghans with asylum applications.
Daniel Potter.
Daniel has made a consistent commitment to the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics at the United Community Center.
Kevin Quijano.
Kevin has shared his time with the Expungement and Pardon Clinic and the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics.
Samantha Rice.
Samantha has volunteered over 120 hours with the Unemployment Insurance Clinic at Legal Action, the Civil Legal Helpline, the Student Legal Aid Clinic with Legal Action, and the Bankruptcy Clinic with Legal Action.
Kendra Schmeling.
Kendra has split her pro bono time between the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics and the nonprofit clinic.
Claire Shaparsky.
Claire has shared her time with the Milwaukee Justice Center Family Forums Clinic and the Estate Planning Clinic.
Clara Spohr.
Clara has volunteered the majority of her time with the Student Legal Aid Clinic with Legal Action of Wisconsin.
Lauren Stanek.
Lauren has volunteered with the remote Milwaukee Justice Center and also in-person locations with the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics.
Jackson Thiel.
Jackson has given his time to the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics, the Expungement Pardon Clinic, and the Small Business Clinic.
Aimee Trevino.
Aimee has volunteered over 120 hours with the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic and with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund in Washington, D.C.
Liam Wilcox Warren.
Liam has been a consistent volunteer with the Civil Legal Helpline and has spent time with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
Noah Wolfenstein.
Noah has split his pro bono time between the Student Legal Aid Clinic with Legal Action of Wisconsin and the remote Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics, including the Small Business Clinic.
Zachariah Zierson.
Zach participated in the recent Will's Caravan spring break trip, the Milwaukee Justice Center Family Forums Clinic, and with various locations of the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics. That's everyone. That's fun. That's fun. Back to you.
Wow. So I said earlier that our students, which is to say you, do this even while concerning yourselves with courses which include internships in the community, hammerships, as I understand you call them. And we very much want them to be continued to call that next year, even when Tom is emeritus. We don't need Kearney-ships at the law school. But not only in the midst of the courses, including the internships, and not only in the midst also, as I said earlier, in the context of the need to find some remunerative work, but also just standing here and having the privilege to extend the certificates and knowing in many of your cases the other things that you have been involved in just here in Eckstein Hall is really awe-inspiring. It's not too much to say. I don't know every student, it is true, but as people walk across, I know this person to have been involved in the Jenkins Honors Moot Court competition, or that person to have been on an extramural moot court team, this person to have been substantially involved in the Sports Law Society, another person to have been substantially involved in, indeed president of the Student Bar Association. The list goes on. And that's good because it doesn't get easier when you're out there, and the habits that you have developed of being involved in so many things, including pro bono work, will be to your advantage, yes, but to the advantage of the larger community. So there is little more formally to say except some thank yous. Thank you to Maha Jweied and to Derek Mosley for our Posner pro bono exchange. Thank you to Josh Gimbel and to Todd Gimbel, the law school. Todd may not be exactly as you remember it from your time walking these halls in the mid-1980s, but it is so wonderful to have you and your family here in town. And we are grateful for the support that you've given us even from afar, but to have you in person, thank you. Thank you to the law firms and the lawyers who partner with us, hundreds of lawyers in this community. Many of them are alumni, and many of them not. Volunteer in pro bono projects through their firms or individually. To say that we could not do it without them is really to put the emphasis in the wrong place. We are grateful to them, and a number of you are here, for letting us be a part of their or your work. And thank you again to our students on behalf of the Marquette Law School community, including not only those of us who have the privilege of working at the law school, but also the ranks of Marquette lawyers more broadly. We do admire the pro bono work that you have done even while students. We look forward to your work as Marquette lawyers. Our Office of Public Service will remain a resource to you as you incorporate pro bono work into your career going forward, if you elect to do that, as we hope. And substantially more immediately than that, I hope that everyone will join us outside this room in the Zilber Forum for a reception. But how about one last round of applause for yourselves?